I have been playing Minecraft for over 8 years now, and in that time I have made many a mob farm to harvest resources from the inhabitants of these Minecraft worlds. In the past two videos of this nostalgic trilogy, we looked at my many different Minecraft bases and the best of many redstone contraptions I've made, but in this one we will look at all the mob farms I've made over the years, and behind me is the very first one. Deep underground we have spawning platforms, mobs appear in the world and wander off into the water streams below to be swept away for harvesting. It was simple and primitive, and over the course of this video you're going to see how both the game and the mob grinders in it evolved. So we start off with a classic mob farm design, the giant stone box built up in the sky. This wasn't the first sort of mob farm, but it was the first one that I made a tutorial for on this channel. And this was way back before I'd even started talking in my videos as well. So I explained it all by pictures and text on the screen, but today I'll be able to just stick my head in here and give you a quick explanation. We have spawning platforms, we have slabs on them to stop spiders spawning, and then the mobs literally just wander around and eventually fall into these water streams, which we have on every single floor, and eventually they'll fall all the way down here. Now, in junction with that video, I also made this XP farm, and to be fair, I didn't big this one up as much as I could have. It's also a record disc farm. What you can do is simply stand on the slabs here, and then skeletons will be able to see you, and they will start shooting at you, which they're doing right now, and if they hit the creepers, then you're going to get records. Now, if you want to collect the items, you hit this lever here to activate the redstone. Now all the mobs that are falling down will instantly die at the bottom. And then we can go down below and just collect the drops with a water stream here. And look at that, a crazy amount of them, including the record discs. Now if we come back up here, this is an XP farm, so you can go up the ladders and you can simply punch the mobs and get yourself a little bit of XP. Now there are many different ways in which to farm mobs in this game, and one of the popular concepts back then was to use pistons to funnel mobs all the way down to a central point, which you can see in action right now. The Endermen wander, they get pushed around, and they make their way into this 2x2 chamber at the bottom. And it's down here that they very slowly get crushed to death, not really taking advantage of full damage here. There's actually a few principles of mob farming I was yet to learn. For example, not even being able to really use this as an XP farm is a bit of a downside, but I also built this in the middle of the end dimension, and as you can see, I covered everything in water instead of just flying away over here into the void, which would have saved me a lot of time and effort. But let me remind you, my friends, this retrospect over previous contraptions is what it's all about. This was way before we knew the ins and outs of how mobs spawned and lots of different principles that has made mob farming so easy. For example here, I've kind of realized, I've only made a handful of platforms, 16 blocks. That is going to severely reduce the spawn rate of the Enderman. One of the first videos to blow up on my channel was my cave spider EXP farm tutorial video, and this showed you how to take the mob cages you could find in mine shafts and then turn them into farms that used water streams to shuffle all of the cave spiders to a single location where they would group up. Now this behavior unfortunately isn't the same anymore, so you don't see farms quite like this. This one down here doesn't work like normal because I'm not in survival Minecraft and they're not tracking me up to the top here. But essentially what would happen is the cave spiders would spawn, fall into the water, and get pushed all the way to the middle. In today's game though, they would climb up the walls and do all sorts of different stuff. So anyway, from here, you've then just got a simple crusher, and the redstone is also very basic and not compact as well. But this essentially brings them down to one hit, so the player can then stand here, punch the cave spiders, and get their experience points. Now we're going to gloss over this next one just because it's not the most interesting, but I'm sure you've seen a mob cage which you can find in a dungeon when you go caving. Well, I made a tutorial to show you a very simple trap, and I kind of wanted to put this in the video just because we will do some more interesting stuff with spawners later on. But the principle is so simple here, and it relies on mobs nudging each other into this bit here, and that they used to swim upwards in water, which means they would drown, start to take damage, and then their drops would just make their way to the front there. This of course worked on skeleton spawners too, and let me remind you that this was before we had hoppers to automatically pick up items. Now, this next mob farm that I designed had quite the impact on the Minecraft community, as you still see this mechanic around today. This was the introduction of shifting floors into farming mobs in Minecraft. If I break into the top of the farm, you can see that the initial designs weren't particularly impressive, but essentially the mobs would spawn on these strips here. The slabs are again there to stop the spiders from spawning, and then these would get pushed left to right, and the mobs would simply fall down between the fence gates and get funneled to the middle here, and then make their way all the way down to the very bottom. Now, you might have realized that the farm was running without any of the redstone active, and that's because mobs can actually move around freely when they are in distance of the player. However, if you're too far away, then you need something to automatically move them, and that's when the shifting floors come into play. So you can see now redstone signals are being sent around and the floors will be shifted back and forth. So the idea of having shifting floors in a mob farm was shared with the community, and players discovered that the blocks moving back and forth would actually allow the mobs to fall through them if they weren't walking or moving about on top of them. And as you can see here, the mobs spawn inside of the farm at various levels and slowly make their way downwards to the very bottom. So it wasn't the most efficient of designs, but it was kind of ironic how the shifting floors went in this direction. Of course, later on this was considered a bug and this feature was removed from the game. Now, not long after this, I designed an expansion to help the player pick up the drops that the mobs would leave on that platform. It was now replaced with fence gates, as the items would fall through moving fence gates. Now, apparently I thought it was a good idea to put this button on the opposite side from where you actually catch the items, which is down here, but as you can see, the water streams lead all the items to this pressure plate so you can pick them up. And look at this here in the background, one of my classic layer by layer tutorials. This is how I got started on YouTube. I showed people how to build things one layer at a time, which a lot of people really liked. So here's another farm based around a mob cage. I'm sure you've seen this a gazillion times. However, we're looking at some old school redstone, some old ways of doing things here. And as you can see, activating the redstone will crush these skeletons at the bottom, but they're on a timer. It'll also stop new skeletons from falling in amongst this lot, which then become basically one-hit kill. Problem with this design, though, is that when you reset it, you do have to wait for all of this redstone to unpower. Well, this one certainly had some inelegant redstone, but it was essentially a crusher for Endermen, and this was my idea for using Endermen as an XP farm to simply look at them and bring them to a central location. So you would spend your time over here angering the Endermen, bringing them towards you. They'd fall into the traps down below, and then you could press the button over here and activate the crusher. Once the crushing was over, you could head down to the bottom here and then simply one punch each of the Endermen. This next concept is an automatic XP farm, and it's from so long ago that I had to refresh my memory on how this worked. You see, you used to regenerate health differently then, so if you had some iron armor on or you had a sword which you could block with for an indefinite amount of time, then you could let the mobs attack you and you'd actually regenerate your health. But as you can see here, all of the wolves in the room will attack any mob that goes after you, so that's an automatic way to just stay here AFK and continuously collect XP. My next mob farm was a one-off that I did in creative, and it's because there were some bugged out seeds that could generate lots of these cave spider spawners in mine shafts together. Now these two were unfortunately outside the range of the main farm. There were 10 in this area in total, and 8 of them could be activated at once if the player stood just somewhere around here, and I think you can actually see them all as well. I haven't seen this thing for a long time, but I spent a long time engineering this so you could stand in one place and bring the spiders from all 8 of them together. So let's turn off all of the lights, that was very dramatic, and let's let the cave spiders gather. Now that I'm in survival mode, they're actually all making their way up to this spot and clustering together. And that was the project, to simply link 8 of these up together. It's absolutely crazy. Look at the layout here. We can actually get a far better look at this farm if we are just to pop inside. It's interesting how I didn't put water in every single block. I guess the spiders track the player, and so they'll climb up some of them. But it's not quite as complicated as it looks, but there's certainly some interesting stuff going on here. But all of the cave spiders, wherever they spawn, can make their way over to the crusher. This next mob farming video I created was a 3-in-1 combo, 3 different designs you could use in the Nether dimension. And of course one of the main principles is that you are in a perimeter so that mobs are more likely to spawn inside of your farm. This was an old method you don't really see anymore. Mobs could spawn on pressure plates so they would immediately get pushed off and fall down to the bottom. So we've seen this principle already in this video, and I simply applied it again here in the Nether. So zombie pigmen can also fall through shifting floors, and that's a way to farm them in the Nether. This one over here is a very, very early version of a classic farm you now still see being used today, and we can actually change our game mode to survival in 1.3, and oh yeah, I've got to anger them first, right? Come here. And there we go. They're all dying at the bottom, so this didn't include XP. The player could then go all the way down to the bottom and collect their drops, and I'm dead. 1.4 was the pretty scary update. The Nether got an overhaul and a new mob came into existence, the Wither Skeleton, and so this farm would be set up in the bounding box of a Nether fortress so that Wither Skeletons could spawn in here, and the only place they're able to spawn is on these pressure plates. Now as they fall down, there is vines to make sure that they fall from here, and they'll be one-hit kill when they land at the bottom. Now there was an exploit here that we took advantage of when we used the Crusher. Notice how it's killed the pigmen, it's killing off the blazes and skeletons, but it doesn't do any damage to Wither Skeletons that stand on slabs, and that was an old bug, and that meant you could clear out the other mobs and keep all of the Wither Skeletons. With the pretty scary update came the introduction of beacons, which could play a valuable role in keeping the player alive, using regeneration and resistance, and so the automatic XP farm Mark II was born. We got some spawners bringing in the zombies, they attack me, I stay alive, and then the wolves come and they get the zombies. I think everything that I've shown you so far has been from creative mode, where I've been designing and figuring out how to make different types of mob farms. This though comes from the very first Hermitcraft world, where we made a witch farm, and as you can see we've got a proper perimeter that was done in survival mode. This project never got 100% finished, and it's also not working at the moment, and I think this might be because I've opened the game in the wrong version of Minecraft. So I've cleared the platform out, and now I can show you how this farm works. Basically the witches spawn, but also inside of a tripwire, and that then activates the redstone at either end, and that shifts the platform back and forth so that they fall through. Now there's also a very cool little feature down here as well. If I just fall down, you're going to see that we land on these trapdoors that open for a split second. That is achieved by some carefully placed tripwire right here, so it's perfectly timed so that they open for the witch to fall on it and die, and then their items go into the water streams, and I believe in a later version of this game there was probably a hopper pointing into this chest. This next absolute beast of a mob farm wasn't created by myself. This was originally made by Kirshar, one of the people who actually pretty much invented the concept of mob farming, both hostile and with passive mobs, and this was his beast up in the sky. Inside it we can see where the mobs spawn, and then the pistons are controlled by redstone to let water down to flush them all in the center through this lava. The reason that was done is so that mobs that had armor landing at the bottom would be on fire and supposed to have killed them. As you can see, a couple here have survived. Now the reason that I've included this one in my list is because myself and Red Eyes came over here and actually renovated this farm later on in the season, and it's also such a crazy cool classic mob spawner up in the sky. I had to show it. I should also mention that this of course was in Hermitcraft Season 1, so all of this was done in survival. And I think the reason that me and Red Eyes renovated this was to add the hoppers in at the bottom so we could collect items and automate storage of all the drops. Many of the farms that you're seeing in this video obviously no longer work in the game, but this one right here had a very short lifespan as it was created during one of the snapshots for 1.6. What this farm did is exploit the behavior of zombies taking damage and then summoning in reinforcements nearby. That's why there's all this water in the world, to funnel those reinforcements up to where this current zombie is. Now the snow golems don't actually do any damage to the zombie at all, so once you got one in there, this farm can just keep going forever and ever, and eventually you can kill off the zombies with a splash potion and take all of their XP. Now this farm is the one that you saw at the very beginning of this video. It's the Enderman farm from Hermitcraft Season 2. And you're going to see some other cool farms from this season in just a moment. But I totally forgot that I was the one that came over here and built the Enderman farm this season. Now Enderman farms have changed a lot over time. They've generally got simpler. But back then it used to be an absolute grind. Look at the size of this thing right here. It took hours upon hours, and as you can see, it's very slim. But once again, it involves tripwire above where the mob would spawn so that the Enderman get shuffled down, and they eventually fall down and hit some vines, which resets their full damage, and then they go through the final drop that brings them down to one hit kill at the bottom. And I think below this soul sand, there's also hoppers that collect the ender pearls. And hey, this is a backup of the world, so I can just destroy stuff. Yep, there you go, there's hoppers down there. This next design was one I was really fond of. It's a slime farm based around a slime chunk, and what slimes do is they tend to just pick a direction and go, regardless of if they're running into a cactus or not. So eventually they take enough damage, split into their smaller pieces, those ones will die, and the hoppers collect all of those items. The problem with this one though is that it's kind of ridiculously oversized and it uses a heck of a lot of hoppers because of that. This then led me to take feedback from the community and make a revised slime farm. Of course, the slimes will simply wander off the edge of a platform, so rather than having the hoppers on every single floor, we now use water streams at the very bottom to push them into the cactuses, and underneath those there are hoppers, and this was a far more efficient way of doing things. This next one was called the Unique Mob Farm because the mobs would actually spawn on the very same redstone that activates their removal from the farm itself. And the one thing I remember about this is it being laggy, and even in 2019 on a powerful computer it is still a laggy farm. But yes, as you can see, the spawning spaces are literally part of the redstone that moves the pistons to get the mobs shuffling down to the platform below. So like you've seen before, we're using tripwire hooks to then move a signal downwards and back across to where the mobs spawned. And that's why it got the name the Unique Mob Farm, because it's kind of unique and different. Now I said that in this season of Hermitcraft there were some pretty crazy mob farms, and this is one of them right here. This was known as the Cage. It was built where a nether fortress once was, and you can guess what it's for. It's for getting those wither skulls. So the mobs would spawn inside of here, and there would be tripwire hooks up above, and as you can see, the pistons would then push all of the mobs down below. And it's the same old trick that we saw earlier, except this time it's automated. So the crushing happens around the clock, meaning the player can AFK in here and slowly accumulate these wither skeletons to come over here and kill. Now the iron golems were here, I believe, because magma cubes would fall off of the farm from above and they don't take full damage. So then the golems would clear them up, take care of them, and that means there can be more spawns in the farm above. Now this next contraption isn't a mob farm, but it's something you would attach to the bottom of a mob farm, and it is a valve for storing enough mobs to get to 30 levels of XP, and this was thanks to a feature where weighted pressure plates could count the amount of entities on top of them. So with a little bit of redstone down here at the bottom, you could attach this to your mob farm and slowly build up towards 30 levels of XP. And there we go, hundreds of mob spawns later. Lava is set onto the zombies to weaken them, and you can see the piston has been extended so no more mobs will make their way into the chamber. The player can then kill all the zombies and collect all of the XP orbs. And then of course you got 30 levels in which to enchant with. I believe I might have shown this project in the video The Evolution of My Minecraft Bases, but we are here again because this is an absolutely almighty mob farm project. There are so many portals here, spawning tons and tons of zombie pigmen that eventually wander off the edges and fall down into a trap at the bottom. It is down here that they get crushed, and then all of their gold goodies are dispensed along this ice pathway over to the storage area over there. As you can imagine, this project took me a lot of time. I mean, imagine mining all of that obsidian. This is just another bonkers farm. And then there is this monstrosity, which never really took off at the time for obvious reasons, but let's go ahead and activate this farm. You can see that the slime blocks go back and forth and shuffle off all the mobs of the platforms. It's actually way more efficient and fast than I remember. This never really caught on though, like I said, and it wasn't until flying machines came about that these sorts of farms where you have the slime blocks going back and forth were really worthwhile. However, seeing the speed of this in action, I am pretty impressed with this weird and old farm design I made. Okay, this crazy project right here was made by Tango Tech. It's a double witch farm, and I came over and helped with this project and built one of the two that you see down below. This time the mob farms were getting even more advanced. I believe this was designed by the Zip crowd, and now what happened is the tripwires were further and further away to keep light updates from reaching the spawning platforms to maximize their spawning potential. But as you can see here, they go through two sets of shifting floors and then they get killed down at the bottom very quickly. The items then make their way up through the middle here, and I believe the way that Tango set it up is that the beacon beams change colour on when items are making their way to the storage system up top. And I can't take credit for any of this crazy beautiful madness going on right here. This was all the work of Tango Tech, and what an amazing project it was. I was very happy to participate in this. Now this next farm is the sort I've been waiting to show you. This is Guardful, where we take the concept of using an ocean monument to farm guardians and really go all out with the decoration and the scale and the theming. As you can see here, the guardians fall from the tanks up above. Now this used to work really fast, and I've got a feeling I might have opened it in the wrong version of Minecraft. But if we take a look at what's going on here, you can see we've got a logo on the side. We've got minecarts moving back and forth underneath these slabs to pick up all of the items. It does, however, double up as an XP farm as well, and I think you press this button here and a signal gets sent down to the bottom, and you can see that water is spreading across all of those slabs, which is why they're on top of the rails. This means all the guardians that fall down now are going to end up in these water streams. I don't know if this behavior exists in the game anymore, but guardians oscillate when they bounce on top of slime blocks, meaning they slowly get higher and higher, and that way we can actually use slime blocks as an elevator to bring all of our guardians up to the top. It is quite the sight. I really like this behavior, and it was a very unique touch on an absolutely massive mob farm. This thing was so much fun to make. In the next part of the video, you are going to see some more survival built mob farms, and that's because Hermitcraft Season 3 had started at this point, and one of the first farms that I decided to do was one known as the Donut, and the concept here might look similar. We saw a primitive version of it earlier on in the video. So this is where things were taken to the next level. Due to a bit of lazy coding in the game, zombie pigmen that are aggressive at you will drop experience points even if you don't kill them. And so they fall all the way down the bottom there, and the XP comes to us through this slime block elevator. So I had to get the camera account on here and just see this from a few different perspectives. This farm is pretty much commonplace on most servers now. It's such an amazing XP and gold farm. But this was one of the first times it was really fully utilized, and it was one of my favorite builds from Season 3 of Hermitcraft. Once again, we're in the Nether, and it's a similar type of farm to what you've seen before. This is an AFK with a skeleton skull farm, but this time the design is a little different. We're using slime block sweepers to move all of them off of the platforms down into these crushers down below. And the trick once again is that they crush all of the mobs except the wither skeletons. Those are the ones that stay alive. You can see the trick here in action. So then the player can come along and simply kill all of these wither skeletons. Back on Hermitcraft Season 3, one of these witch farms below me I helped to build, and I don't know which one it was, but we introduced a new member to the server, Mr. Impulse SV, by bringing him on and asking him for help building one of these witch farms. He built one, I built one, Tango and Mumbo built the other two. Now once again, I can barely even remember building this, but it's quite similar to the one from the season before, right? Except the spawning area looks a little more advanced. There is soul sand, iron blocks and redstone blocks here, and it's all kept in the middle of darkness, and oh look at this, it's actually 3 high, this one. But yes, it's a classic witch farm, and of course all the drops from each of these get sent all the way to the storage system in the middle. Once again, we have a never-themed farm. This is my tripwire-based blaze farm. It uses tripwire to detect the blazes, push them with pistons all the way down to the bottom here, and actually push them through into a portal, which is disabled at the moment, but the idea is that that could put all of the blazes into the overworld so you could accumulate a lot of them and kill them at a later date. 2 things about this farm. First of all, I actually sat on this design for like over a year. There was just one little thing about it that I couldn't fix, and eventually I sussed that out. The other thing that I really like is it actually uses the items moving back and forth between hoppers to alternate powering the pistons, which saves on a lot of redstone. So far in this video, we have mostly seen hostile mob farms, but now we're going to see an ink farm of all things. It looks a little derpy, but let's also take the environment into account. This is amplified terrain, and in the middle of this desert we decided to build our ink farm. It's the perfect environment to build one, and so we have this crazy inverted pyramid field leading to a squid that's got water streams below it, and of course they spawn in there. They also get zapped by guardians on their way down to the bottom, and then all of the drops get collected. This, my friends, was such a wonderful project. Do you remember the Wither Cage from Season 2? Well, I kind of did it all over again in Season 3, and the bit up the top is a prank. This was known as the Skull Storm farm, and that's because it was a Wither Skeleton skull farm that you could AFK and kill the Wither Skeletons using doggies. So let's have a look up the top here. As you can see, you've got your spawning platforms to bring the Wither Skeletons and other mobs down to the bottom area. There are things like cactus and hoppers on the side to catch the magma cubes that occasionally fall into them. And then down the bottom here, the player can simply AFK over on this spot, and the dogs will go out and attack the Wither Skeletons, and their skulls will drop into the crazy amount of hoppers that are just below the carpet. It's a really amazing farm, and this is the little walkway to get up into it. We also created these communal areas for people to come and store their own dogs so that all of the people on Hermitcraft could use it together. And then all the drops got shuffled down into these chests. Let's have a look and see if there's any skulls left over. No, surprisingly they've been ransacked, but it also produced gold and coal and arrows and bones as well. I've logged into this world, I'm in survival mode, and it is just working. This is an automatic XP farm using wolves like you've seen it before, but this time I don't even have to worry about taking damage. The skeletons fall onto here, and if I'm standing on this trapdoor, then the wolves go ahead and attack it, and I collect the XP. If we go into spectator mode, you can see that I have mysterious rooms full of wolves and another mysterious room with skeletons. Not sure what that's about, but it's a classic mob cage farm. The skeletons get funneled up a water stream, and then from the top they fall down and they take damage, so they become basically one hit kill, and that's when the wolves go ahead and attack them, and in this version of Minecraft they drop XP. This next project was a slime farm, but none like I'd done before. This was not one slime chunk, or 2, or 3, but 4, all next to each other, just like this. Now this wasn't one of those farms that I made look pretty, but you can appreciate the amount of digging that went into this, and in order to lure the slimes off of the platforms, you can see that periodically there are iron golems, so the slimes would make their way towards the iron golems, fall off the edge, and like you saw earlier in this video, a classic concept, using the water to push them into cactuses and collecting the items with hoppers. This is a witch farm for Minecraft 1.9, and I made this during the development of that update. And like you've seen before, it involves mobs spawning on a platform where there is tripwire. The difference is this time, the redstone it controls manipulates the water so that water streams slowly flush off the witches. As you can see, it's a compact and elegant design, and like always, the witches fall all the way down to the bottom here, and you can collect their drops with some hoppers. The next farm you're about to see is also not a hostile mob farm, and it was also built at the very end of the season, meaning that it barely got put to use. And just look at how bonkers this is right here. A giant 3D grass block built around the farm. And on the inside we have lots of grass and the means to dispense water across all of these platforms. So passive mobs like sheep and cows and pigs would spawn on this inside area here, and the water sweeper would flush them all off into the bottom where they get sent into the nether. All in all, I gotta say, this was a pretty bonkers project, and I'm really sad that I never really got to use this farm. But don't worry, next season we'll build a passive mob farm. Now this blaze farm is unlike other farms you've seen before. It uses the mob's natural tendency to wander to shuffle them into these spaces down here. So the blazes are actually allowed to roam free on this platform here after they've spawned. And then we take advantage of a bug in 1.9 where we can actually move blazes through pistons. So the blazes wander into the center there, and you saw that the pistons actually pulled it through into this spot. Now what's happening down here is that the blazes are getting crushed one by one. So that blaze is queuing up to be crushed, so it's a one-hit kill. And then the blaze is going to get moved through the piston down into this killing chamber. So basically, they continuously spawn, the pistons pull them through into this crushing trap, and like always, you come down here and the blaze is a one-hit kill. So as the Minecraft game receives its updates over time, various farms that we had that worked in the past no longer do, and the donut was one of those victims. So in my AFK XP and gold farm video, we updated this to the donut too, and this improves the design with a whole bunch of new features. For example, there were iron golems around the outside to lure magma cubes off of the platform so they could plunge to their death. There were now 4 places at which the zombie pigmen could pathfind to the player, and this means that wherever they spawned they could take a quicker journey to fall to their death. And so we're going to need to see this in action. The XP balls get shot along the ice at the bottom and then pushed all the way up to the player, which always just looks absolutely magical. Of course, there's loads of redstone going on here to pick up as many of the items as we can and make all of that stuff happen, and it actually brings all of the items above the player. So when you're here collecting your XP, you can head down through the elevator in the middle or go up to that area, and as you can see, you've got access to enchanting, and this is where all of the items get stored. So the farm you just saw, I also built on Season 4 of Hermitcraft, and that's where we are right now. And if you remember when I showed you the passive mob farm from Season 3, I said that we'd see another one very soon. And this is the one that I built on Season 4, and you can kind of see it in action as there are these grass chambers down below, and then water is flooding over the edge. So this is very similar concept to what you saw last time, however it's much more compact. And again, we make use of nether portals. So on these floors right here, mobs are able to spawn, then occasionally the water will get activated and flush all of the mobs into the nether. It is in here that they die a horrible death when they come through the portal. They'll eventually fall down onto the magma blocks below. The reason there are slabs though is so that you can keep horses, because horses are a little bigger than a regular block, so they won't actually fall down the bottom, and that was a way for me to also farm horses. Once again, we have another witch farm, but this one I am very fond of because it used a very unique concept where you had skeletons with flame bows shooting the witches off of the platform. Now the reason they're doing this is because there's iron golems over the back that they're aiming at. Their flames also go into the water here so that they fall down onto floating sand blocks, which causes them to despawn. So it doesn't cause an issue that way. Now let's simulate it a little bit, as I'm too close to the farm for mobs to spawn, but here's a bunch of witches, and as you can see, they're getting shot off and then they fall all the way down to the bottom where they die. It's a really impressive mob farm, however it was unbelievably tedious to do all of this right here in survival Minecraft. You can see that skeleton has even managed to break out of its minecart, and those sort of problems happened a lot when creating this farm. And I also ended up building this absolutely ginormous dropper elevator to bring all of the items from the witches to this AFK spot up in the sky where the storage was. Taking full advantage of skeletons in minecarts, we have a farm here that produces records, because creepers that are one-hit kill land after they've taken full damage in the path of a skeleton once again trying to shoot at an iron golem. And here we have that cheaty floating sand again, so that if the arrows land in this area they get automatically despawned. Now the spawning platforms here are really clever. The carpets are there to stop spiders spawning. The trapdoors are up the top so that only creepers can spawn in this area, and then there are cats sitting in the middle of the chests, which means that the creepers run away from them and eventually make their way into these water streams. And then of course over here we have a water stream elevator to bring them to the top and drop them down. Now the record farm that you just saw was from a tutorial world. It was based off of a farm I built on Season 5 of Hermitcraft. You can see the skeleton, the iron golem, and if we just go through the wall here you can see these spawning platforms. So it was pretty much the same thing, just built in an actual survival Minecraft world. And so the next few farms that you're going to see are from this season of Hermitcraft. Now this next farm might be a little bit tricky to spot, but down in front of us there is actually a large tank of water, and it is inside of here that we have a not terribly efficient squid farm, and it's powered by guardians. So squid spawn in the water here occasionally, and then the guardians will zap them and their drops will fall to the bottom and get picked up by a minecart hopper travelling back and forth on rails. Now as I said, it wasn't terribly efficient because there is a lot of water around here. There's an ocean around the outside. But despite this giant ocean, the squid would still spawn inside of here just at a lower rate. But when you're in your base all the time, it adds up and you get plenty of ink sacs. The next farm we're looking at is a witch farm, but unlike ones that you've seen before, this one revolves around being able to use the looting enchantment and basically stand AFK in this spot, continuously clicking where the witches would fall down, and then you'd be able to get more drops and XP as well. Now this is the location of the witch farm. Once again, a massive perimeter has been torched up so that none other hostile mobs can spawn in the area. That means they all spawn inside of here, and because the farm is not running, we've got a crazy amount of witches. Now this uses the slime block sweeping method that we've seen used before in this video to flush all the witches down to the bottom. So let's go ahead and activate it, and you can see they all get pushed off and then funneled down to that point down below where the player will be attacking them. And from here you can see them falling down, and we actually have an automatic kill mode as well as one for the player. So all of their drops are being put into this crazy sorting system back here as well, which can actually put the items into shulker boxes. So sticks, glowstone and redstone will automatically be filled up inside of shulker boxes and then put into these chests. Now as amazing as this setup was, that's not all. There was also a slime farm around the back here, and the two could actually be linked up together. You might have noticed a trend in this video that mob farms are getting built lower and lower down in the world as opposed to higher up, and that is to take advantage of how the game spawns mobs. They'll actually spawn them faster when farms are built very low down in the world with no blocks above them. So this is the slime farm, and the slimes simply get attracted to the iron golems, but of course they fall down into these water streams. They go through a slime reducer that reduces them to the smallest size. And then from there, the slimes make their way up this ladder and into a water stream, and can you guess where this goes? It'll take the slimes all the way around to where the player is attacking the witches. So not only can you kill witches, the slimes will drop down and you'll be able to use your looting sword on them. Now this next farm isn't terribly interesting, but Mumbo's base of course is, and it's interesting to see that my newer computer can actually handle his base. Back on Season 5, this place was a little bit of a lag fest for me. But anyway, I've been searching for the farm in question. It took me a while to find it because I didn't realise that Mumbo had done this gorgeous decoration around the top of it. And so on this island there was a very small space in which passive mobs could spawn, And down here we built a passive mob farm for Mumbo, and it was very similar to the concept you saw in the last season, but this time we decided to use dispensers with a little bit of compact redstone around the back of it, taking advantage of the new observer blocks at the time. So just like last time, the mobs get pushed off into a nether portal. Now, one of the things you haven't seen a lot of on Hermitcraft are the various different farms I've made around mob cages. They're not terribly interesting, but this one was a little different. We've got 2 spider spawners on that side, and then 1 cave spider spawner over on this side. And then I built this really cool little room around it. You've got viewing platforms, a storage area, and you can walk down to the bottom here. Now, I've put on night vision to make it a little easier to see. Let's take that off for a moment, though. And now it is very dark and spooky. Anyway, the spiders have been set up so you can walk back and forth here with a sword to kill them. And the cave spiders, I believe, just fall down and die. So their drops go straight into these chests. Oh yeah, that's right. They actually get killed by magma blocks. That is actually the fate of the other spiders over on this side as well. You just also have the option for the player to kill them. Now, for a lot of you watching, what I've built from this point onwards will be in recent memory, as these farms were built in Season 6 of Hermitcraft. We've built yet another witch farm that elevates the mobs all the way up into the sky to the AFK spot where the player stands, and it again is a looting witch farm. There was, however, another farm I made at this time in creative mode. This was with one of the first snapshots of 1.14. The introduction of the Wither Rose meant, of course, I had to dig out a ginormous perimeter and create a farm at the very lowest point in the world so that the spawn rates were very high, because mobs can spawn inside of Wither Roses. And the results of this were pretty good. It was a very fast farm. And now hopping back to the Hermitcraft Season 6 server, in the End Dimension, of course, we built the Wither Rose farm, so a platform up in the sky for Endermen to spawn on. They get lured into the fall trap in the middle, and then the Wither blasts them at the bottom, meaning that they drop not only Ender Pearls, but Wither Roses as well. And the best farm, I think, is our multi-purpose chunk of death. This is a slime farm, a passive mob farm, a hostile mob farm, and a cave spider spawner farm, all mixed into one. It is pretty much the ultimate all-in-one mob farm. Then we've built the ridiculously overpowered pillager raid farm that exploits raid behavior to get all of the mobs from an entire raid in one go and drop them down for the player to kill just completely easily. It's absolutely ridiculous farm. Last but certainly not least, we have a leather farm as well. We actually built one of these in Season 5, but I'd shown that in my Evolution of Minecraft Bases video, so I didn't bother showing it in this one. But it's a similar concept once again, using a mycelium island to farm the mushrooms after conditioning the area so that mobs can't spawn anywhere else. And that, my friends, brings us to the end of this video. If you have enjoyed it, make sure to be subscribed to my channel for more incredible Minecraft projects like this in the future. And on your screen will be links to the evolution of my Minecraft bases and also a history of my redstone contraptions. If either of those appeal to you, be sure to go and check them out. And please do leave a like to support this video. I appreciate you doing that. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.